So we've watched a lot of film now, if you've been following this channel, talking a lot of film studies so far that are here. We've even touched on some box score stats, but let's make a video really diving into the analytics. I made one of these about Joe Burrow, but now let's talk about the one about Matt Stafford. So first chart here, just where Stafford ranks in certain positional categories here. These are advanced stats. We're not just talking box score, which I find fascinating. And that's basically what we're going to do. Just go through all of the advanced stats that I find interesting and want to look at and see if there's some things that we can find that maybe tell us something about Matt Stafford. So Matt Stafford, 8th best PFF grade, which I feel like checks out. That's kind of where he's typically been for most of his career, right? Just sort of on the outside looking in at the top 5. This feels right to me. For big time throw percentage, an impressive, tied for 7th, gets a lot of big time throws. The turnover worthy play percentage is probably the worst aspect of his game. He is prone to turn the ball over here and there. Worth noting, this is where they rank in each of these grades. So he's 24th in turnover worthy play percentage. All the numbers in this video are going to be where you rank according to your peers among eligible quarterbacks who have had 20%. At least 20% of their team's snaps. So that's how that works. Average depth of target, he pushes the ball down the field relatively far, 8th most in football. Adjusted completion percentage, also 8th. So, that number 8 really kind of seems to be a trend here a little. And then time to throw, 12th quickest in football. So, isn't Tom Brady, but does get rid of the ball at least relatively quickly. Maybe not super quickly, but, better than average. However, what do all these numbers tell us? Well, they tell us a couple things. I mean, they tell us that, okay, Stafford's a pretty good quarterback and needs to cut down on the turnovers, but other than that, does a lot very well. But let's get into sort of some specific matchup stats, like something like this. So, again, this is where Stafford ranks in terms of his PFF grade or passer rating in certain categories. So, under pressure, only the 24th PFF grade. So the PFF not impressed with how he performs under pressure, but the passer rating, the actual results have been fine, 6th best. So at the end of the day, if Stafford's struggling, but the team is still having success, who cares? So blitzing or getting under pressure doesn't hurt him too much. When he's not pressured, the passer rating still does go up. So obviously, and again, this is relative grades to everyone. So everyone obviously gets worse when you're under pressure. That goes without saying. But even relative to his peers, he gets better when he is not pressured. And the PFF grade, significantly better. Passer rating, still better. When he is blitzed, he's dangerous. I mean, 4th best PFF grade and best passer rating. A lot of this is Cooper Kupp, who's great against the blitz, but obviously a lot of it is Stafford as well. When he's not blitzed, he drops back to 12th PFF grade and 10th best passer rating. The Bengals blitz 26th most, so the Bengals do not blitz that often, and the Bengals do still generate pressure relatively frequently. They get pressure 14th most. So again, stuff like this, I think this kind of does the first reaction. It says, hey, Stafford crushes the blitz. The Bengals aren't going to blitz that much. That's probably advantage Cincinnati. And again, I think both of these teams have a matchup advantage defensively. This chart is also interesting to me. So when Stafford gets rid of the ball, this is, again, where you rank in terms of PFF grade or passer rating in specific categories. The two categories this time are when he gets rid of the ball in less than 2.5 seconds or when he gets rid of the ball in more than 2.5 seconds. PFF grade has a big jump. He goes from 18th best to 3rd best if he hangs onto the ball for more than 2.5 seconds. Passer rating, though, not that big of a jump. So that's kind of the thing, and maybe it goes down to the the turnover worthy play percentage being high, but sometimes that doesn't match the results itself. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, and I think what this tells you is kind of what football is to a large degree of, hey, if you can take away that first read, if you can take away Cooper Kupp right away, then Stafford, it'll make things more difficult for sure. But at the same time, it doesn't mean he's done, because he can still perform really well when he has to hold on to the ball for too long when things aren't getting open right away. So it's interesting. Going over here now, so this is again where they rank in 3 different categories, and this is the things we're measuring this time are how far he throws the ball down the field, how well does he do, and how well does the team do. So 20 plus yards down the field, the 10 to 19 range, and then also the 0 to 9 range, not including behind the line of scrimmage, because that tends to be pretty fluky. But the 3 categories, again, PFF grade, passer rating, and where you ranked in terms of how often do you throw the ball in those specific spots. So this does not mean that they throw the ball 19% of the time, 20 plus yards down the field. It means they rank 19th in terms of how often do you throw the ball 20 plus yards down the field. And the Rams, much like the Bengals, have a lot of success in that 10 to 19 range. But the interesting thing is, while the Bengals almost never throw it there, the Rams throw it there more than anywhere else. That's where they live. So the Rams maximize where Stafford is at his best and where the offense is at its best. So that's advantage Sean McVay for sure. Still solid across the board for Stafford, but what's interesting is his PFF grade tends to be pretty good on 20 plus yards down the field, but the passer rating not quite as good, whereas his PFF grade tends to be not that great in the 0 through 9 range, but the passer rating is pretty good there. So I think in previewing a Super Bowl, I'd probably care more about passer rating than PFF grade, I would think, unless I feel like the passer rating has been fluky. I care more about results and sometimes, throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp, who's 3 yards down the field, who can run for 40. Stafford's PFF grade isn't going to go up too much for that, but the results are, and that's what we care about because it's a team sport. But as a whole, I mean, the Bengals have been pretty good at taking away that 10 to 19 range, so that's interesting, and that might be where the scheme is won or lost on both sides of the field. But at least for the Rams, we can trust they'll probably throw it there relatively frequently, but maybe the Bengals will too, who knows. Finally, this chart, which isn't really about Stafford, it's about the Rams offense as a whole, but again, we're talking about this in terms of relevance to the Super Bowl, not just talking about this in terms of Stafford. This is going to be wide receivers and how they match up versus man and zone. So the 4 categories are PFF grade versus man, yards per route ran versus man, PFF grade versus zone, and yards per route ran versus zone. The first thing you see is Cooper Kupp is he crushes man. Do not play man coverage. And the Bengals don't play that much man coverage, although a little bit of an asterisk on that, and I'll talk about that in a second. First, let's just talk about Cooper Kupp. The 94.5 passer rating versus man and a 4.64 yards per route ran versus man. And then versus zone, he's still amazing against zone. Like, he's still great against zone. He's still going to be their number one option when they're playing zone coverage unless he's getting doubled, but it's not quite as godly. It's only just really awesome instead of amazing. The one asterisk I had on the Bengals playing a lot of zone coverage is against Kansas City. They started off playing a lot of zone coverage, but they eventually switched to man and had more success once they started, taking away Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. The other guys could not get open too much against that man coverage. Wouldn't recommend that against the Los Angeles Rams, obviously, partially because, then who's going to be able to man up against Odell? Who's going to be able to man up against even a Van Jefferson, who definitely performs better against zone, can still do all right against man, although the numbers aren't great against man. And really, it would be Odell if they play man. That would be that next option because, Odell is also very good against man coverage. Tyler Higbee, I have his numbers there. Obviously, we don't know if he'll be healthy or not, but Blanton's numbers are actually pretty similar in terms of his splits in man versus zone. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. If I had to give an advantage here, I probably do lean advantage towards, again, both defenses. So I give it to the Bengals, but I find this stuff fascinating, and I think it's worth looking at, if nothing else. It doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, because of these numbers, I now, feel strongly one way or the other. But I've always said about analytics is I want to know them. When I'm making my evaluations, I want to have the numbers available. I'm not going to make my entire decision based on the numbers. I'm going to use film. I'm going to try to get as much information as possible and then, look at which kind of these things tend to translate to wins and losses and then make my evaluation. So this is just part of the evaluation process, is coming up with analytics. I think that it's important. And, obviously football isn't played in a vacuum, but PFF does a pretty good job of kind of, getting it as close as you can to some of that stuff. So yeah, that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.